Alec, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How you doing? Happy to be on with you. Looking forward to a big game tonight for sure.
Let's start right there. I am curious because if you've seen BYU on TV, the fans are amped up, the team's getting better and winning bigger games as the season goes along. The place is packed. The energy is huge. What is the energy going to be like for this game tonight in Ames, Iowa?
Yeah, to be honest with you, in the comment section of my Pick and Preview story over at Cyclone Alert, I want to say that there's some nervous trepidation, I guess, with how well BYU has been playing, winning their last 6, and I believe 8 of their last 10 coming in. So I think that there is some awareness amongst Iowa State fans to how well the Cougars have been playing over the last several weeks or months. And I think it's a really interesting matchup for Iowa State, which I think is also really fun between these two teams because they are so much different. I know Mark Pope isn't there anymore, but Kevin Young kind of running a similar type of offense. And the idea of having lots of prolific shooters and a guard that can effectively get it to him in Yegor Demon. And I think BYU has become one of my most fun teams to watch in the country here over the last several weeks.
How much time does the coach, TJ Otzelberger, spend coaching as opposed to working on his upper body in the weight room?
I think it's kind of funny that you asked that. Last year in Boston for the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, during the press conferences, he was asked about how tight his polo shirts are that he wears on the sidelines. And he kind of explained it in a very serious sense, which is exactly how TJ is behind a microphone. But you get him away from a microphone, he's actually a really funny, loose personality with a sarcastic, dry sense of humor, which matches really well with mine. He actually explained it really well. He was like, I have an awkward build to where if I put a bigger shirt on, it would be too baggy and it wouldn't fit right. But this one's too small, and I think the too small one looks better than it being too baggy throughout my arms and body.
Way to break it down.
So he really did. I wish I could send you guys to a place to actually see the clip or play it on air. But it's really funny how analytical he got with it because it's really funny that's how TJ is. Anytime he's behind a microphone, he's very well thought out and knows exactly what he wants to say and seems to have a great answer for everything.
Iowa State coming in with 7 losses to this game. And, I don't think the record, when you just look at it, really jumps out at you. But they are ranked 10th. And when you dive a little deeper, you see, 22-7 doesn't sound crazy. But for most of the losses, one was to Auburn and it went right down to the end. And then there's a key injury that impacts a 3-game losing streak. And then the top 2 scorers are out for this loss over here. I mean, there's reasons and there's excuses, and usually most of this stuff tends to lean a little more towards the excuse category. But can we really explain away most of Iowa State's 7 losses with they didn't have their guys or they were playing the number 1 team in the country?
I'll be honest with you. I think that you can use that excuse for a couple of them. I don't think you can use it for all 7 of them. I think if you look at the schedule like you kind of did there, I think – the Auburn loss, you're not going to fault anyone for losing to Auburn. Iowa State had an 18-point lead in that game. They let it slip away in Maui. So I think that that's certainly something that they're not happy about. I think the West Virginia loss, they were 1 of 17 from 3 that day. Everyone has bad shooting days. That's a road game on tough environment. West Virginia looks like an NCAA tournament team. Every team has those. You get to the 3-game losing streak. For all intents and purposes, Iowa State beat Arizona. It took a half-court heave of, even longer than half-court. And they didn't close it out in overtime. So I think that one without Milan Momcilovic is worth pointing out. The K-State game is inexcusable, guys. I know that BYU beat them earlier this season. Even though Iowa State didn't have Milan Momcilovic, for Iowa State to essentially trail for 36 minutes of that 40-minute game to lose 80-61 the way they did isn't acceptable. The staff, the players spoke about that, and it was a similar message after they lost to Oklahoma State last week of that's not okay to lose that way despite Momcilovic being out. The loss at Kansas, I think, has aged worse, especially when you consider the margin. I don't want this to come off as an excuse or defending Iowa State because I do think they're better than KU, and I think they should have played better that night. They didn't have Momcilovic that night against KU. And Bill Self is a perfect 38-0 at home on ESPN Big Monday broadcast. You can't really ding Iowa State for not being the first one to give him a loss inside Allen Fieldhouse. And I just can't, discredit anyone for losing to Houston in the Big 12, no matter who's available or not available. So I think you can write off 2 or 3 of those losses because of injury, but a couple of them too, most namely the K-State and the Oklahoma State defeats. You can't come up with an excuse for those. They're unacceptable. I don't care how many players are unavailable. Iowa State's more talented than Oklahoma State, and they're a better team than Kansas State is, and they should have won those games.
Watching them play, I saw that Arizona game you speak of and all that, and watched them on the rematch the other night, and Momcilovic had a nice game and all that. My perception and my analysis is that they really are a team in that, Jones leads them, but he's not even averaging 17 points a game. And they got, 5 guys in double figures, and then somebody close. Jackson's real close to that. So they can beat you in many different ways. You really can't key on anybody specifically, figuring if we shut player X down, we have an outstanding chance to win. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think it's a good assumption. There's certainly players that you don't want to get going. I think a lot of that generally centers around Iowa State's guards and wanting to prevent transition fast break opportunities, and then also just trying to keep them out of the paint and the half court. I think if you're able to do that, defenses generally have a better success rate against Iowa State. Curtis Jones, obviously someone that BYU is going to want to stick to on the perimeter. Same with Milan Momcilovic. They're also going to want to stick to him. Both those guys are shooting about 37% or better from 3 on the season. Momcilovic has seen his percentage come down since coming back from injury from beyond the arc, but he's made at least 2 threes in every game except one since returning to the court since that displaced bone in his left hand or left finger. So he's been good since he's come back, and I think he's found additional ways to impact the game, and his volume has gone up from beyond the arc. I think Keyshawn Gilbert, someone that you guys will see tonight in the starting lineup for senior night, he struggled here of late, especially with his turnovers. In his last 5 appearances, he's had at least 4 turnovers. They need to get that down. I also think they would like to see his scoring numbers kind of increase. He struggled to get into double figures like he was early in the season and early in Big 12 play. They need to get him going if this team's going to reach their postseason ceiling.
5 seniors, 2 juniors, and a sophomore make up the top 8 scores for this team. And the sophomore, Momcilovic there, what does he bring? Because he was out for some of the games you speak of. He's a guy who missed 3 games in a row, or the 3-game losing streak. What does he bring as the sophomore? Why is he so important to the mix? Aside from obviously he's a 3-point shooter, and I was looking him up and I saw he won 3 high schools and a 3 high school state championship in Wisconsin. So I assume he's got the kind of winner vibe going. But what does he got, and why is he the sophomore who's broken in and made himself so valuable?
Yeah, you mentioned his floor spacing ability. I certainly think that's something that he brings to Iowa State as someone who's a really good catch and shoot threat. He's still kind of finding some of his consistency. He's gone 2 of 9 from 3 here in the last couple of games. I think you'd certainly like that to be 1 or 2 more made threes. But like I said earlier, he's a 40% 3-point shooter on the year. You can't really say that you need to be more consistent there. He's skilled offensively. He's crafty offensively. I would say crafty is maybe more than skilled, the right word. He's good at getting to his spots, making a shot. Off of 1 foot, his fadeaway turnaround jumper is an effective thing in the paint, or just outside of the paint in the mid-range. He's good there. I would say really wants to challenge him to move away from the basketball and get open. Against Arizona, they ran him off of 2 screens at the top of the key, caught and shot for 2 made triples there. He had a really nice made shot right in front of Tommy Lloyd that was also in the first half. And he was standing on the weak side of the court, catches a pass from Taman Lipsey that's rifled across, and he hits it. It's things like that he provides that I don't think Iowa State necessarily has in other players consistently in their role. Jones can shoot it. Nate Heisey off the bench has been on a hot streak from beyond the arc. I think he's made 11 of his last 18 from three or something thereabout. That's added value, but Heisey had struggled previously this season. So I think one thing the biggest thing Momcilovic gives them is a floor spacing threat. And he does give them some size, but he's not a great athlete, so that is worth pointing out.
BYU also can beat you different ways. We saw that the other night when they weren't hitting against West Virginia and they went inside to Fus-Chiori. Like I like to say, they played foosball, and he responded accordingly. How are they in terms of defending the post?
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that's, worth observing here. I would say it's got big physical bigs, Deshaun Jackson, Brant Chatfield. They're going to be bigger on the inside than BYU will be. When you think about Keita, he's just 6'8", 6'9", but he's a really good athlete. Big Foos, as I like to call him. He's a little bit more broadly built, I guess you could kind of say, right? But he's only 6'6" or 6'7".
Yeah.
So I would say it'll have a size advantage on the interior in terms of height and presumably length as well. That'll be valuable for them. They are top 55 nationally this season in 2-point defense. Their defense swarms, right? Anytime you watch Iowa State, anytime you watch Houston, they're trying to make their opponents uncomfortable by pressuring the basketball. They're going to blitz ball screens. They're going to trap ball screens. Of course, a lot of those actions happen outside of the 3-point arc, but you'll also see them trap, and you'll also see them kind of try and send two to the basketball inside the paint to kind of help facilitate some difficult looks and make shots at the rim harder to convert upon.
Looking at the scores here, Iowa State does not play a lot of close games since they jumped into conference play here. The last close game they won was an overtime win at Texas Tech, 85-84. It looks like there's only about 4 other games that have been decided by single digits, and they lost them all, including the Arizona game you mentioned on the heave, or they would have won that thing. Is that just random statistical, or do you worry about them if this game is tight in the final minute? They haven't been in that situation a lot, and it doesn't look like they've won too many 1 or 2 possession games.
Yeah, I think it's a really good observation on your part. I would say that they are an experienced team this year. I mean, like you said, they start 3 or 4 upperclassmen, just the one sophomore, Momcilovic. They have good minutes continuity as a group as well. They return their 4 leading scorers from last year, so they understand how to play with each other, which I also think is valuable. I think one of the reasons they haven't played close games is because they're incredibly good at home. They pound people at home. The only team that they really kind of played a close game with or lost to at home was K-State. This is my second year covering Iowa State. That's the only home game they've lost. And to me, it's one of the biggest question marks of not just Iowa State's entire season, but like the overall college basketball season in general is how the heck did K-State come into Hilton Coliseum and beat Iowa State? I think they struggle more on the road this season. If you look at some of their shooting splits, they certainly are more favorable at home than they are on the road. But that's for a lot of teams because you're just more comfortable playing at home. You're used to the rims. You're used to the shooting background, the depth perception, all of those details that kind of go into shooting. I'm not overly concerned if they get into a close game. I do understand your point with them not having played a lot of close games this year. I do think it's worth pointing out that they had to fight back and went on the road at Iowa, and they won that game by 9. The Big 12 opening win at Colorado, they won by 10. They had to fight back and win that game in Boulder. And I think that those scores being decided by 9, 10 points kind of maybe is a little bit misleading of how close those games were until Iowa State pulled away late in those games. I think the Cincinnati game, to a certain degree, kind of similar to that, to a lesser degree than I would say similar, though.
You see Houston as the prohibitive favorite in the conference tournament?
I don't know if I do, actually. I think Houston obviously is the best team in the league. What they've accomplished the last 2 seasons in the Big 12, to me, is as impressive as anybody outside of UConn nationally in terms of accomplishments. I think what concerns me for Houston, and this is just from my perspective of covering the last 2 or 3 Big 12 tournaments, because it's in Kansas City, Iowa State travels really well there. They have a lot of fans. KU travels really well there. K-State will as well. I thought last year BYU traveled well. I'm intrigued to see how well Arizona travels because I know that they've traveled well to Las Vegas for league tournaments in the past. I think Iowa State is a capable winner. I think if you want to pick Houston, no one would ever say that was a wrong pick or a bad decision. I think that Iowa State is just as capable as anyone of doing it, though, because once you get into the Friday, Saturday type of games, if Iowa State gets there, their fans are going to pick up a lot of those available tickets more easily than Houston will be, and that place will be filled with a lot of Cyclone fans.
I've seen Iowa State projected as a 2 and a 3 seed. The 22-7 seems like not a great record for a 2 seed and maybe a bit of a reach, but the strength of schedule, having played Auburn and Houston, that screams maybe they got a chance at that. Where do you see them?
I think it's a really good question. I think they're right there between the 2 and the 3 line. I think it probably depends on what some of the SEC teams do in the last week here of the regular season, perhaps how much they consider conference tournaments here over the next couple of weeks as well. I personally think they're a little bit closer to a 3 seed than they are a 2 seed because of some of the bad losses that they've taken. We talked about the K-State loss. We talked about the Oklahoma State loss. I don't think they'll get dinged too much for losing to West Virginia on the road. If you look at bracket matrix, they're right now the top 3 seed. Of course, not every bracket has been fully updated here daily. I do think that they're behind, obviously, Auburn, Duke, Houston. I think they're certainly behind Bama, Tennessee, and Florida. And then I think you get into a really interesting situation of where are they at in relation to Michigan State or Wisconsin? How does St. John's factor into this equation? What about Texas A&M? Where are they at in this topic? Texas Tech as well. Is Kentucky falling? All of these teams, I think you can kind of pick and nab at their resume a little bit. And if you think Iowa State's deserving of being a 2 seed, I have no qualms with them being a 2 seed. I just don't necessarily think that they're better than Tennessee or Florida, and I certainly don't think that they're better than Auburn, Duke, Houston at the top of the country either.
Well, Alec, we appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for all the background on Iowa State. Enjoy the game tonight.
Thanks, guys. Looking forward to it. Hope you have a good rest of the show and a great rest of your night.
Alec Busse covering Iowa State for Cyclone Report and 24/7 Sports. The game is on ESPN2 tonight at 7 o'clock. To beat a team that is a 3 seed, PK, if that's indeed what they are, would pump the Cougars up. Can they get to 6, 5, or possibly 4? Where is this going to shake out? And how much more do they add to the resume in the Big 12 tournament in KC? All remains to be seen.
Oh, this would be the biggest win they've had in the season.
At Iowa State's better than at Arizona? Mm-hmm. Okay. Kansas win is also obviously helping them. Man, the 3 of them together, that's a pretty strong trio right there. Yeah. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Coming up next, everything you missed in this show. Plus, it's a Utah Jazz Ticket Tuesday. Should we do it after the break? Giving away Jazz tickets right after the commercial break. Stay with us.